Ready to break up with your bullshit? I mean, all those excuses that are keeping you stuck. Because you have one life to live. And if you're not having fun yet, then that's a problem, dude. Welcome to Goals, Grit, and some woo-woo shit. The podcast where you learn about the habits of kicking ass at life. Whether you want to get ripped, get rich, or just get high on life, this is the place to be. Here's your host, best-selling author and feel-good expert, Una Duncan.
I am so excited to introduce you to Janet. So, Janet Whan is a sleep and self-care coach for midlife moms. A former insomniac of 40 plus years, holy moly, Janet, turned great sleeper. Janet is passionate about helping women give themselves permission to sleep, rest, and care for themselves after years of giving everything to family and others. Janet's membership coaching program, Permission to Sleep, helps her members sleep better, listen to this, guys, sleep better in 8 weeks or less without pills, potions, or needing anyone's permission but their own. Janet is a certified life coach with the Life Coach School and also trained at CTI as a coactive coach. She's also trained in CBTI, which is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. Now she's empty nesting in Southern Ontario with her husband of almost 25 years and can be found reading, kayaking, hiking, and working in her garden when she's not talking about sleep. So, Janet, thank you so much for being here. When I read Sleep Coach for Middle-Aged Women, I was like, oh my gosh, thank you. And when I posted that you were coming, there were so many questions. And the first thing that struck me is how similar so many of the questions were.
Yeah.
And even, I'll tell you the first one right off the bat, because when I read it, I was like, that's me. And I didn't know anyone else was like that. So I'll tell you the first one right off the bat.
Okay.
I go to sleep totally fine. No problem. My head hits the pillow at like 9:30 and I'm out and I'm happy for it. And then I wake up at 3. And some of them are saying, I'm not even particularly stressed. It's just that I wake up. And then my mind starts to go. So can you tell us about that pattern, first of all? Because I thought I was the only one. And apparently so did everyone else.
No, I'm putting my hand up too. So it's totally common. This happens to many, many women, more women than men. So what happens in the middle of the night, and the reason it's happening 3, 4, usually, like that's sort of the typical time, right?
Yeah.
We sleep lighter as the night goes on. So there's 5 different sleep phases. We sort of know them as 3, like there's light sleep, deep, and REM. And REM is sort of when we're dreaming and creating memories and our brain is wearing down pathways for memories and information and stuff. Deep sleep is sort of our physical recovery, right? It's when our growth hormone is highest, when our immune system is most active. We're working on recovering from just a lot of daytime activity. And then there's light sleep. Light sleep is the sort of second half of the night. It's actually 50% of your night. So you're circling through these sleep stages, like one at a time. You go through a whole stage and then you probably wake up a little bit. And then you go through a whole stage and you probably wake up a little bit again.
Yep.
Most people wake up a little and don't even know it. Other people, particularly women, wake up because of other reasons, our hormones, right? So if you're in midlife and you're in perimenopause and your hormones are kind of all over the map, or if it's the week before your period, these are the times when we're probably most likely to wake up in the night. And so what happens is you might have a hot flash or just some reason that, your body told you to wake up. You hit the nail on the head. It was not stress that woke you up. It was your sleep cycles and it was maybe your hormones. It might have even been a noise in your house or your dog or who knows what. Mm-hmm. What keeps us awake is our thoughts about it. So as soon as you start having stress about I should be asleep, right? Yeah. It's not the middle of the night. I should be asleep. That's what starts to cause the stress. And then you start having conversations in your head about your ex-boyfriend from high school and what you should have said to that girl down the street when she didn't like your jeans and when you were 14, right? So
totally. How are you in my head at 3 a.m?
Right. Totally normal. I'll give you a tip for all the people who are struggling with this. Yeah. What you want to do is neutralize that thinking, right? Get all the dramatic stuff out of that. So you say to yourself, okay, I'm awake. What's really happening here? What's the truth of this situation? I'm awake. It's the middle of the night. It's dark outside. Other people are asleep. Those are the only true things that are happening. Everything else is drama that I'm creating in my mind right now. If I can just focus on the truth, I can keep myself calm and I can likely go back to sleep. There's nothing that says we should be asleep at 3:00 in the morning.
Okay. I love this. I love this. I totally think this is true. And I also think maybe I'm just really attached to my drama but if I'm awake now, I'm not going to function tomorrow because I know that that's true. I think that's true. Help me with that thought.
You think that's true. It's probably not true. It's one of the most common insomniac thoughts there is. And so I mentioned this just before we started recording here, but like, we have to think of sleep and insomnia as kind of two different things. Insomnia doesn't really have very much to do with sleep at all. Insomnia is a worry about being awake in the night. It is stressful, negative, automatic thoughts about sleep that are probably inaccurate. It is unmanaged stress from during the day. It's several things. It's mostly about stress, but sleep, like some people can have some stress and still sleep because they have different tools to manage the stress, right? But if you don't have any tools to manage your stress, that's when you can end up with some difficulty sleeping. And I say that with a caveat too, because difficulty sleeping and insomnia are different things. So chronic insomnia is when difficulty sleeping lasts for 3 months or more and happens 3 nights a week or more, right? It's like a long-term, it starts to cement itself because of bad habits and behaviors that we kind of pile on top of each other, like, the princess and the pea, and she's got like 18 mattresses to try not to feel that pee anymore, right? We're trying to avoid a feeling that we don't want to feel, which is usually some negative feeling attached to our stress or something that happened during our day. And so we go grab a weighted blanket, or we take melatonin, or we take a pill that's going to make us feel drowsy, whether that's over the counter or something else, just because we're just desperate to not struggle with our sleep, right? So I think I'm getting kind of off the topic of the original question, but it's because we're attached to our drama. We believe our drama is true. We believe whatever is the true number. I don't think anyone knows, but it's like 12 to 60,000 thoughts we have during the day, right? You think of that like a ticker along the bottom of a news show, like, on CNN, where there's constantly the little thing that scrolls along. Your brain's doing that to you all day long. And we're deciding, I'm going to believe that one. I'm going to believe that one. I'm going to believe that one, instead of conditioning our brain to serve us up thoughts that serve us instead of that are not helpful, right? Like these dramatic ones.
Okay. So I wake up at 3 and I'm like, oh, I'm awake. Oh no, I'm not going to be able to function tomorrow. So next step is like, okay, is that true? Because you functioned on little sleep before. Yep. And you're just tired. That's okay. You won't die. Like,
you won't die.
I won't die.
Several things, like you won't die. Insomnia is not fatal for anyone. No one's ever died from it. It's a terrible idea to get in your car if you're tired, for sure. We know this. It's like, being drunk. You do not want to drive exhausted. But it is not a disease. It's not an illness. You're not going to like cure it because you're a human. And sometimes we have nights where we don't sleep worse than others. But you will get through your day. You've gotten through other days. We have tons of evidence that we've gotten through days before. We feel like crap because we told ourselves in the middle of the night, we're not going to get through the day. We've literally created a self-fulfilling prophecy by having that thought at 3 a.m. Oh, I'm not going to sleep now. I'm going to have a terrible day. My meeting is going to be terrible. Everyone's going to know that I'm tired. I'm not going to be able to pull this off. And so what do you think happens? Right. It's kind of like, I always say, if our brains will create a self-fulfilling prophecy and we know this happens with our thoughts, then why not create one that works for us?
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. I love this. This is amazing. Thank you. But actually, before we move on from that, I will survive, I'll just be tired. Would you say that's the best, most empowering script, or do you have another script that you can offer?
I think that one is like, so they're what I call like ladder thoughts, right? We can't go from everything is terrible, I'm going to die, to, oh, it's a land of roses and daisies and I'm going to be perfectly fine tomorrow. Your brain isn't going to buy that at first because you don't have any evidence. Like you're just kind of like, yeah, whatever. So if you can get a thought that's partway there, like say what you said again,
Oh, you'll just be tired. It's okay,
Yeah.
won't I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like a partway there one, right?
Yeah.
One that you could get to eventually through practice. And this is a practice, like, not going to lie, this is similar to weight loss, right? Or fitness routine or anything. We have to work at this well, there's several. So one is I've had my core sleep. 5.5 hours is what we consider biological core sleep. You can function for any number of nights on that amount of sleep. It's not ideal, but you can function, and you've done it before, you'll do it again, right? All my body needs is my core sleep. I'm just fine, right? That's one way. So then you're not cementing, I'm going to be tired, right? Like in your first thought, you're like, it's okay, I'm just tired. Well, maybe you're really not. You're awake. Why are you awake? Your body woke you up for a reason. Maybe you just don't need to be asleep right now. So that's another one. Like, it's okay, I'm just awake. Like, nothing's gone wrong here, right? That's another one that I like to say is like, there's nothing wrong. If my body wanted to be asleep right now, it would be. I'm good. If I fall back asleep, I will, right?
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let me get into, because I got selfish there and asked my question first. Okay, here's another big one. Here's a big one.
Okay.
Someone said, I have no trouble sleeping. I have no trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, but I do not want to go to bed. I always have one more thing to do. I have FOMO. And then someone posted an article about revenge bedtime
procrastination.
Yes. And a million people were like, oh, that's me.
Yeah.
Okay. So can you talk about that?
This one is my favorite because I totally suffered from this. And this was one of the key things that I stopped doing to help fix my sleep. So what is happening? It's like pretty much any other kind of procrastination, right? And women suffer from this far more than men. And I think it's because we're just super busy, and we need to be an octopus, right? We have so many roles that we have to play and so many things that we have to do. And so by the time we finish the things we think we have to do, there's no more time for the things we want to do. So instead of learning to schedule our day to fit in the things that are good for us and like take into account self-care and know that if I do these things, like get in a workout and eat really well and take some time to meditate and read my book that I've been trying to read forever, if I don't schedule that in for the day, then I'm going to be pretty pissed off by the time I go to bed that I had no time for myself. And then I'm just going to be like, well, screw this. I need to stay up now because I'm not going to bed today without taking an hour for myself, right? But then you're taking it from yourself. You're not actually taking it for yourself, right?
Oh.
Yeah. So especially if you do it when you're already drowsy. So because bedtime is a funny thing. People tend to think of bedtime as like when the news is over, when my partner goes to bed, when people are supposed to go to bed. We don't actually go to bed typically when we're feeling drowsy, which is what we need to relearn to do, right? We're pretty great at not recognizing our sleepiness signals anymore because we do what you just said. We're cleaning the kitchen. We're getting all the stuff done that we need to get done at the end of the night. And we need to also remember to take some wind down time because sleep is not a on-off switch. It's like a dimmer, and we need to ease into it. So, so the bedtime procrastination is an even bigger deal. If you are drowsy, your body wants to go to sleep and you still stay up.
Yeah.
Right. That's a sign that you really need to be looking at your daytime routine. Like there's nothing wrong with your bedtime routine or your morning routine. Probably this is about your daytime.
Yeah. So they just need to clear parts of their day so they can get to do that stuff that they want to stay up and do.
Yeah. I mean, it's not quite as simple as that, but it's a sign that that's not happening, right? It's a sign that you are not taking yourself into account during the day enough. Like you're probably just run ragged. And if you're really feeling like you have to sacrifice sleep to get me time. Yeah.
I love what you said. You think you're giving yourself the hour, but you're taking it. Yeah, that's a good point. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So then what about people who get their 7 to 8 hours and they are not rested?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So I the first thing that I do when I hear that is suggest that you see your doctor and maybe have a sleep study, because there are several, and that's not something I do. Like, I'm a coach, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not a therapist, right? I don't diagnose and treat. However, being sleepy during the day or not feeling rested is a sign of sleep apnea and a couple other sleep disorders. You're waking up so many times in the middle of the night that you're literally not, you think maybe you were asleep for 7 or 8 hours, but you really weren't. And often that's a sign that that's what's going on. However, you could get a sleep study, find out you don't have sleep apnea or anything else. And what's really going on is you have a thought that, well, I read somewhere I need to get 8 to 10 hours, right? And so I'm trying, and I'm wearing my Fitbit, and it's telling me I'm still only getting 7. And it doesn't matter what I do, I still get the same numbers every day. And now I'm super frustrated because every day it tells me the same thing, and I don't know what to do. So that's where I'm like, okay, take a big breath, and know that 7 hours is actually the healthiest amount of time for an adult to sleep. We need less and less sleep as we age. So I would also need to know the age of this person who's asking. But yeah, less and less sleep as we age. Pay attention to your thoughts about how you feel, but like what you're thinking about this amount of sleep.
Right.
What else is going on during your day? Like, it's not always about the sleep. It can be about your stress level during the day too, right? Because stress can make you tired.
Right, because one person said they seem to get a ton of sleep, but when that alarm, they said I shouldn't say ton, they go to sleep at 10 p.m. easily, sleep the night through, and when the alarm goes off at 6 a.m., she said it is like crawling up through like she has to have 2 alarms. It's the hardest thing in the world to get out of bed. Yeah. And so would that be an indicator of sleep quality, or is that something else?
If you feel like your sleep went well through the night and you weren't waking up a bunch, and you have a sleep study and it shows you don't have sleep apnea or something else going on, then I would ask a question. Why do you think waking up is supposed to feel like Tigger jumping out of his bed?
Oh, okay.
Okay. Maybe this is what it feels like to wake up.
For this person.
For a lot of people, right?
Right. Yeah.
There's a thing called sleep inertia. And you know how some people just aren't morning people and they're just really grumpy for like the first 45 minutes and you can't talk to them.
Yeah.
Is that you?
Yeah. No, I am the opposite of that, but I've had roommates that are like, space, please.
My husband and my youngest son are like this, and they're just like, don't even talk to me for like an hour. Anyway, what's actually happening probably for them, this can happen for 5 minutes, or it can happen for up to like 45 minutes. The different parts of your brain are kind of, if you think of them like a computer, they're kind of coming online at different times, right? So we're not fully thinking like our normal, rational human planning, executive functioning self until they're all kind of awake and connected and working the way that they work during the day. This doesn't mean anything is wrong with you. This just means this is what it feels like for you to wake up in the morning. And it could just mean that this is what it feels like in this like 5-year period, right?
Right.
My other thing is like, does it go away? Like, does she feel better in a little while? And if so, then fine, right? I wouldn't worry about it. It's this expectation that I should be able to just jump out of bed and put on my workout clothes and feel I'm taking on the day. I don't know very many people that feel like that right after they wake up.
The theme that I'm hearing emerge is women pathologizing their own experiences around sleep. And would you find that is generally the case?
Yeah. Especially if they're struggling with insomnia, everything is terrible. Everything is a problem, right? Like, so my favorite thought was when I couldn't sleep for decades was, well, sleep is just for chumps. Like, why would I want to waste a third of my life in bed? That is the most ridiculous idea I have ever heard.
Right.
Like, when am I going to be productive? When am I going to read all these books? When I'm going to, like, these people just don't know what I know. Right. And I didn't realize I was just saying those things to myself to make myself feel better for how rotten I was feeling. Right.
So, but what are you saying, that those were good thoughts because it helped you not pathologize the insomnia, or are you saying don't go that far?
No, I'm saying that's a terrible way to think. Okay. Yeah. Because it really made me just not even like, I was just kind of like, well, there's no hope for me, right? Like I was so far believing my negative thoughts that I didn't even look into, well, is there something I could do that could make this better? And I see that a lot, right? I see a lot of times women they're surviving and they're worried about so many other things. It's like, this is the last thing. And this has been going on so long. It just must be who I am. It just must be how I sleep. And there's a little bit of truth to that, right? Like we all need different, there's a large variety of sleep need across different people. Some people can get by with 6 hours, not a problem. They never have an issue. It's just not a problem for them. Other people need 8.5 to feel really good. Like you need to really learn what feels good to you, knowing that the incidence, like the lowest incidence of health issues and early death is tied to 7 hours of sleep, not 8 to 10. In fact, it goes up significantly. Right. The more after like 7 hours you get. Short sleep is actually healthier than long sleep.
Yeah, that's interesting. But okay, I feel like one of the reasons that women are pathologizing their experiences around sleep is because of devices. And that's actually how we got in touch. I wrote about my Whoop band, and Janet emailed me back and said, hey, sleep coach here, just so you know, monitoring your sleep is not always the healthiest way to go. So could you talk a little bit about that? Because there's a lot of people who mention their Fitbit data when they were talking about their sleep.
Yeah. And that's how I started when I was first trying to figure out my sleep, was my Fitbit. And what ended up happening is it just frustrated me because it kept telling me over and over again that I was only getting between 6 and 6.5 hours of sleep, and just making me more angry about it. Secondly, it gives us a lot of information, but what are you doing with that information? Right? Yeah. Like, what does knowing how much REM and deep sleep you got last night do for you? How are you going to impact that the next night? You probably aren't, right? Like you probably don't know. Thirdly, they're getting more accurate, but they make these calculations based on how much you move in the night, your heart rate, a couple other things, like whether, it thought that you were awake. You need to be able to look at them as like a trend over time, not every single morning going, okay, what did it tell me? Right. Yeah. You don't really want to pay
yourself on a scale.
That's exactly it. Exactly. Yeah. Like, who knows why you gained a pound last week? Maybe it'll be gone next week. Like, we don't know. Right. Yeah. It's exactly like that. These things have created a specific kind of insomnia called orthosomnia, which is basically defined as an obsession with your sleep data to the point where you've created insomnia for yourself. Because what happens when you're a good sleeper, you don't have any idea why you sleep well. You just do, and you never think about it. And somebody who's an insomniac comes up and says, how do you do this? And you're like, what do you mean? I lie down and I go to sleep. What are you talking about? So focusing on that data and paying attention to it every day is actually a negative behavior for a lot of people. And if you're someone who tends to get obsessive about stuff like that, it might be something that, you might want to throw away. In my program, we use a paper diary or a Google sheet, but we don't even calculate any data or information on these things until we have 7 days. And that's because we're looking for trends, right? We're not looking at, did I only sleep 5 hours last night and then 8 hours the next night and whatever. I'm looking at what was the average of your 7 days and how did that compare to the average of your 7 days last week and the week before, right? So, and we're very focused on quality, not quantity.
Okay. So that brings me to another question. Someone said their Fitbit is reporting that they never get, I forget whether it was deep sleep or REM sleep. I think it was deep sleep. She never, according to her Fitbit, she never gets deep sleep. Yeah. But it seems like she feels fine because she said, should I be worried?
I mean, I would probably go and talk to your doctor and question that, because they typically do a pretty good job of showing that. But who knows, right? Like, it could be nothing. It could be her Fitbit's broken. It could be, it's unlikely that you're not getting deep sleep. So if that's what you're worried about, try not to worry about that. If that was the case, like you'd be suffering. However, there are men, this is really cool. Men in their 70s and 80s can almost drop their deep sleep stage almost entirely. It's very weird.
That is weird.
I know.
Okay,
Anyway.
so that makes me want to shift to talking about aging.
Yeah.
A lot of people have questions about noticing some changes in their sleep as they get older.
Mm-hmm.
So one woman, for example, said, she falls asleep early, goes to bed, doesn't overeat, no alcohol past 7 p.m. She wakes up after 2 hours, and then she'll fall asleep, go to sleep for another 3 hours, etc. And she says it runs in the family in perimenopause. And she's asking if there's anything she can do. And then someone else said, yes, I only get insomnia the week before my period, and it's only started since I turned 40. So I'm just wondering if you can talk in general about the hormonal cocktail that we are all experiencing and how it relates to our sleep.
For sure. So she's not alone. My biggest piece of advice, and this is going to sound really challenging, and I probably can't even explain it well enough in the short time that we have, but the best thing we can do for situations like this is learn to kind of embrace wakefulness, right? Try not to be afraid of it. Try not to think something's gone wrong because you've woken up. That's where we get ourselves into trouble, right? Is like, well, human beings shouldn't wake up 2 times a night. Like, I shouldn't wake up 2 hours into my sleep. Well, says who? Right? We have actually lots of anthropological evidence that probably this is the way humans used to sleep for thousands of years. And maybe we woke up at like 2 o'clock in the morning and we stayed awake for a couple hours and we did some stuff and then we went back to sleep again. I mean, siesta cultures still kind of do this, right? They sleep in the afternoon when it's hot. The problem is we don't know why we sleep fully yet. We know a lot about sleep, but we still don't totally know why, which is fascinating. So I would say the hormonal thing it's related to estrogen and progesterone, but I'll talk about progesterone first. So if we're talking to moms here and they've had babies, you know that, like, think about the first few months of your pregnancy when you're like so tired you could fall asleep like hanging from a tree branch, right? That's because your body's so full of progesterone to support your pregnancy that you're just like, it's like the world's best sleeping pill, right?
Yeah.
When you are in menopause and even in perimenopause and the week before your period, your progesterone's really low. And so it's tied with a neurotransmitter called GABA, which is also a relaxation neurotransmitter. So what's happening is we don't have the kind of biological support for sleep when we're in middle age and menopause that men do or that we had when we were younger. This does not mean something is wrong. This does not mean we need to fix it unless you want to. Melatonin, most sleep researchers believe, is not overly helpful for most people, except menopausal women and some elderly people who can tend to be like low on melatonin, right? They think melatonin and estrogen are tied as well. So if your estrogen is low, maybe you do need a little melatonin support at a certain time, but we all probably overdose on melatonin too. That's the other thing. Need very little. Like if you're someone who supplements with melatonin, you're probably taking too much. Like the dose that's recommended is like 3 milligrams. People are taking like 20.
Is there a danger of taking too much?
You can cause the gland that creates it to stop creating it because your body thinks you're getting it. You can get some nasty headaches. You can have a hangover effect the next morning. Some people say it causes nausea. It just sort of depends on you, right? How it's working for you. Yeah, I don't know if I answered it, but it's a combination of knowing that, yes, your hormones, it's actually a sign that everything's going the way it's supposed to, right? This is what's supposed to happen to us. That sucks, but it's true. And if you can remember to say to yourself when you wake up, oh, look at that. Here I am again. I'm awake. Okay, well, this is just my hormones. This is not a problem. It's okay. I'm just awake. Nothing's wrong with being awake in the night. I can go back to sleep. And then, if you were to work with me, my clients have tools that they can use to sort of take it from there. But it starts with this sort of embracing wakefulness and not being afraid of it.
So I love the embracing wakefulness, but you're saying don't go as far as you did. Sleep is for chumps.
Right.
So
I was avoiding it. I was tired and avoiding it. Like I was like, I can remember being in the hospital having, after both my boys and just like dying to go to sleep, but afraid to go to sleep because I was going to miss something. Someone would come in the room, the baby would do something and I would miss it. It was like a combination of FOMO and I don't even know what, but I just thought I needed to stay awake all the time. And I just fought it and fought it and fought it. Yeah.
Okay. So perimenopause, this is supposed to happen. It's natural. A little bit of melatonin might be effective for women our age. And I know you mentioned that you're not a doctor, so maybe this is not for you, but do you have anything to say about a relationship between food and sleep or sleep and the microbiome?
Microbiome, no, although I'm really fascinated with that and I'm doing some reading on it because I do want to understand that better. Food, as far as timing, is important. Like we don't want to be eating within 2 hours of going to sleep because then your body's working,
digesting,
right? You're digesting. If you want to eat something, have it be like a banana, something with magnesium in it, something that's easy for your body to digest. You don't want like high sugar, high protein, like stuff that's going to either like, because sugar is just going to wake you up and the protein is going to be hard for your body is going to go to work on it. So things that are just really simple and easy for your body are a good idea. Yeah. And try not to have it be within 2 hours. And caffeine, really be careful with timing, like pay attention to nights that you feel not so great and what time you had the caffeine. A lot of people I can't have it after noon. Some people say 2, 3,
early. Okay.
Yeah.
What about people who are trying to retrain their body clock? So for example, I've got one client who's got a baby who wakes her up usually at 5:30, but she's like, when the baby does sleep, how can I train myself to sleep beyond that 5:30? And then I have another client whose kids are a little bit older and she's used to sleeping at 9, waking up at 4. But now that her kids are older, she wants to spend more time with them in the evening. She wants to switch from a 10:30 to 5:30. So basically both of these women are asking, how do I shift my body clock?
Yeah. So this is advice that I actually give my clients at the time change every 6 months. Because that's what's happening there too, right? Like we're forcing society into jet lag. It's like a lifestyle jet lag. And by the way, this is what happens if you sleep in every weekend. You're forcing yourself into what is effectively jet lag every single weekend. Yeah. And it's why we have Sunday night insomnia. You want to, if you're trying to shift, like, let's say you're trying to shift an hour, you want to do this probably over the course of like 4 to 7 days. And you want to adjust your bedtime by 15 minutes every night until you're at your new bedtime. If you want to wake up earlier, it's the same thing, right? Or you can't really do that with, I'm confusing everybody now probably, but it depends on what your goal is. If you want to go to bed earlier, then you do it at night. If you want to wake up earlier, you do it in the morning. Because your bedtime doesn't necessarily have anything to do with your wake up time.
Right.
Your wake up time is the most important thing. Okay. Keep it consistent every single day, 7 days a week. Your bedtime should be tied to your drowsiness signals and when you feel tired. Because what happens if you're not tired and you just say to yourself, well, it's bedtime, I have to go to bed now. You go in there, you lie there, you stare at the ceiling, you get frustrated, and now you hate being in your bed and you're telling your brain, it's like Pavlov's dogs, this is not where I sleep. So then the next night you go in there and your brain goes, oh, this isn't where we sleep, right? And that becomes a problem. This is why some people can fall asleep no problem on their couch in front of the TV. And then as soon as they get up and go in their bed, they're wide awake.
Well, that was someone else's question. She said that's exactly it. She said she's exhausted. And then she says she goes to the washroom, washes her face, lies down in bed, and she's ping.
Yeah. So if that's you, make sure you start your bedtime routine before you lie down on the couch or before you're watching TV. Wash your face, get your PJs on, do everything. And then try not to let yourself fall asleep on the couch. As soon as you start noticing head nodding, eyes drooping, if you're reading and you read the same line in a book over and over again, get yourself to bed. Right? Yeah. But don't mix up your routine that way, because what's happening is she was asleep and then she goes and does that. And now she's in a hyper arousal state again. And of course you can't sleep. Right.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with you. Yeah.
So good. 2 people had questions about dreams. Their dreams are really intense and they wanted to know, is it possible to turn down the dreams?
So this is not my area of expertise. However, if you want to think of dreams as being the process of your brain creating memories, right? Like this is what we think dreams are for. Kind of experiencing emotional circumstances that we don't want to think about again during the day. Like we don't want to re-experience them, right? So we make a dream out of them and we create like your dreams are always very symbolic, right? They're like, well, somebody was somebody else and we were here, but it looked like there. And and it's because our brains create memories in schemas. So they create things in like a memory in shapes or in colors. Like if you're creating a memory, something about an orange, like the piece of fruit, it could be in a file cabinet in your brain of things that are orange, things that are round, things that are fruits, things that I like, you know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
So that's why your brain is like coming up with all these bizarre circumstances. So it doesn't mean anything's gone wrong. And again, you can be like, oh, okay, well, that's all that is, right? If they're disturbing, there are some sleep challenges and sleep disorders that have to do with like sleepwalking and night terrors and stuff like that. You might want to have a sleep study done for that kind of thing. They also might want to look into something called lucid dreaming, which is a process. And I don't do this and I don't offer it in my program, but I think it's fascinating. There are specialists who help you kind of become so aware of your dream that you can actually, your consciousness can say to you, this is a dream. I'm in a dream. I'm aware that I'm dreaming right now. Right. And it's just calming for you. And you can sort of understand that like, this is okay. I'm safe. Nothing is happening. Also know that in that REM stage, our bodies are like close to paralyzed. We can't, and the whole idea is that we don't want to be acting out our dreams. It's not safe. Right. So everything is like brain activity at that point, but your muscles are like not, you can't get out of bed. Yeah. So try not to worry that something is going to go wrong there either. And that's sometimes what people worry about, right? Like, oh, it's so real. It's so, I worry I'm going to get up and unless you're taking Ambien. In that case, sometimes people do weird things with Ambien.
Okay. Good to know. Okay. What about medication? Nobody really asked about that, but I know that almost every woman I've talked to about this at some point gets prescribed medication. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So again, not a doctor. So basically, and if you look at my website, it says, permission to sleep without pills, potions, and needing permission. I'm going to guess 85% of my clients come to me already taking at least one medication. Some of them want to come off it entirely. Some of them just want to decrease it. So we do in the second week go over, what they're for, what they're successful with, what they're not, and it's mostly not. In study after study, most medications intended for sleep only showed an improvement of 20 minutes per night for the average person, which isn't really great. And it's a lot to be putting your body through for 20 minutes. People kind of get addicted to that idea that it gives you a drowsy feeling typically at the beginning, that's what's helping me go to sleep. But it's not necessarily. It's what's probably happening is you're assigning all of the power of being able to fall asleep to the medication. You've stopped worrying. You are just calm. And that's why you fell asleep.
Totally. Yeah. When I'm taking a pill, I'm like, I just want to outsource
totally
responsibility to something else.
Exactly what you're doing. Yeah. So, they have a purpose. Like if somebody has just suffered a trauma or they have serious anxiety or something like that, and they just can't do it without assigning it to someone else, then they have a purpose. But they're every single one of them, all intended only for short-term use. And the problem is they get overprescribed and people use them for far too long, or they take more than what their doctor suggested. Right? They all stop working after a certain amount of time. They almost all cause physical and psychological, what's the word? Not addiction necessarily, but like you need more of it to have it. Dependence. Thank you.
Yeah.
there's a lot of them have side effects that are really not great. A lot of them have a long half-life, which means the amount of time that it takes to your body to metabolize half a dose. Some of them have a half-life of like a day or 2 days, which means that if you take it again the next day, you're effectively overdosing because your body's still working on the previous dose.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to be careful. Yeah.
Okay. The last question here is interesting because this is the only person who mentioned other people and partners and how they affect your sleep. But she says that she and her hubby have habits of bringing their iPads to bed and it's hurting their relationship.
Yeah.
It says, even if I don't bring my iPad, he is not willing to give it up. And then I'll just use my iPhone, which I need to have next to my bed because I'm on call. And then she says, and then also my pets wake me up at night. My husband snores like crazy. And I'm a kind of person who has a lot of worry. I really need help.
Yeah.
I wonder if you have anything for that person.
Yeah. So all of those things are separate things that we would work on like a piece at a time, right? I don't think I have one piece of advice that that would cover all of them.
Fix all that.
However, like there's something that in the media gets called sleep divorce. And I think that's a terrible, terrible word for what is effectively two people moving to a different room to get the quality sleep that they need so that they can love each other and be kind to each other the next day. You know what I mean? Like none of us stood at the altar and said, I vow to lie unconscious with you for 8 hours a night.
Yeah.
Right? Like, but we have this thing that like, well, if it's a strong marriage, then I must sleep with my partner. Like that is not true. That's a lot of drama. You may want to believe that, and that's okay. And so therefore, if you want to believe that, and then there's things that you can do to work on it, right? There's earplugs, there's headbands that have like a Bluetooth speaker in them so that you could fall asleep listening to a guided meditation or something if your husband's snoring is bothering you. The iPad use, like this is where I know it's her thoughts, right? Because she's like, well, if I don't have mine and my husband has his, so I might as well just grab mine. Well, no, that's like saying, well, my neighbor eats 5 chocolate bars every day, so therefore I need to, right? I may as well. She is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So my phone is on my bedside table too, by the way, because my kids are at university and I want to make sure that if they call in the night, I can hear their call, but I do not flip it over. I don't look at the time. I also don't have a clock on my bedside table because it's not important to know what time it is. That's when you start doing math in the night, and there's no math in bed. No math. So there's a whole lot of stuff going on there for her where she's like assigning, instead of empowering herself to find her own solution, I think she wants to find like reasons for her insomnia, which is totally normal. And it's exactly what we do, right? But there's a lot that she could do with her thoughts to be like, okay, well, how do I want my experience of nighttime to be, right? Do I want it to include my phone? Knowing that it's probably keeping me awake? And it's not just the blue light, by the way. Like you can have all the blue light glasses that you want, but it's probably the stressful doom scrolling. It's like, what are you reading and how is it impacting your brain and your stress level? That's the stuff that is really keeping you awake.
Nothing relaxing happening on my phone right now.
No, ever, right? Like I know exactly. So yeah, take a look at that. Don't be afraid to adjust sort of sleeping patterns if you're open to that. Like there's so much stigma. Like people will say to me, like, I don't know what people will think about us if we sleep in separate beds. And I'm like, this is really hard, right? Like this is just a challenging thing for people. But I know so many couples whose relationships are better because they no longer sleep together because they're just not compatible sleeping partners. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like I would much rather have a very positive, really rewarding 18 hours awake with my partner than 8 hours frustrated because somewhere in the back of my head, I believe I need to lie unconscious with him for 8 hours.
Or conscious, watching him sleep.
That's even worse, right? Yeah. And I've been there, done that. I resented my husband for years because he was always a fantastic sleeper. And I made it all about like, it's like not fair. It's there's some
you don't
reason
worry as much as me.
No, yeah, like you're not listening for the kids. It's all my job. Like I was putting everything on me when really he was just giving himself permission to look after himself. And I wasn't. I was looking for permission, right? I was looking for him to give it to me. And he was just like, I'm just looking after myself over here. Right?
Wow.
Yeah.
This has been amazing. I've learned so much, and I've, done the reading that most people have done on this, and I've learned so much. So thank you. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to say to all the women out there who are experiencing this and who feel a little desperate or who've resigned themselves and just never going to sleep again?
Yeah, I want you to know that if it was possible for me, it's possible for anyone. I really was a terrible insomniac for over 40 years, and I am the world's most amazing sleeper now. I literally don't give it a thought. And the nights when I do have challenging sleep, because I'm a human and it does happen, I've learned to not make it a big deal. Like it's just, I say to myself, I'm a human. I don't sleep great some nights. It's totally fine. What that means is tomorrow night, I'm going to have like amazing sleep pressure built up, which is kind of like thinking about it like hunger, right? If I don't eat for a while, I'm going to be super hungry. If I don't sleep for a while, I'm going to be super tired, and I'll make really great use of that tomorrow. It's a practice. It's a practice of a way of thinking and a way of looking after yourself and a way of thinking about the rest and sleep that you deserve, that we're just not used to giving ourselves or to offering ourselves, right? And so please don't put it off. Please don't think that there's no hope for you. There really is. And like life is so great on the other side of insomnia. So good.
God.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing. Can you tell everybody how they can work with you?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. I still do some one-to-one coaching. I have a few spots open. Most of the time I have about 5 clients on the go at any given time. I also have an online membership that involves group online coaching a couple times a week. It's called Permission to Sleep. And you can find out about that and pretty much like anywhere else that I am on the internet at janetwhalen.com/sleep. There's also a great worksheet on there that's called Calm Your Racing Mind at Bedtime for the people who just can't kind of settle down. So if you're interested in that, you can just go there and download that. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. I'll make sure both those links are with the interview.
Thank you.
Dude, thank you so much for this. I appreciate your time and your expertise and knowledge on this so much.
Oh, thanks so much for inviting me. It was really fun.
Hey dude, thanks for listening. If you like this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you can get the next one. And by the way, if you rate and review this podcast, it really helps me get found by other people who need some goals, grit, and some woo-woo shit. And be sure to connect and DM me at Una Duncan on Instagram and let me know what you thought of the episode. Chat soon.